Hello, it's such a pleasure to be with you today to talk about circular economy with Sage Lenier, who's here right beside me. So, Sage, tell me, why is it so important to move towards a circular economy?
Hi, everyone. Oh, can you hear me? Hi, everyone. All right, there we go. Good morning. So we're chatting about the circular economy today. I got into this a little bit yesterday with my keynote, but the reason we have to move towards circular economy is because the economy as we're running it right now is just completely nonsensical. We're taking resources from nature, turning them into things, and landfilling them only to extract more, and we're running up against resource shortages already. We do not have an infinite amount of resources. Our resources are actually very precious and very limited. And we can also find that a majority of carbon emissions are tied up in the production of new goods and in the extraction of new resources. So solving climate change, half of the solution, quite literally, 45% of our emission reductions can be achieved by renewable energy, but the other 55% have to come from using less energy, which means we need to transition to a lower energy, low resource demand economy.
Okay. You say something that I think is very interesting and quite different from other activists, because you say renewable energy is fine, but it's not nearly enough. It's like the companies are looking for the less bad alternative, but it's not enough.
Our economy today is 5 times larger than it was 100 years ago, and that's been accompanied by the degradation of 97% of the world's ecosystems. When we're asking ourselves, what does radical climate action mean? It has to go beyond solar panels and wind turbines, because we can look at the science and know that that's actually not enough.
Okay. Yeah, but because what you're saying is we have all the clothes we need for, 100 years, and we have all the electronic devices we need, so we shouldn't be producing more. Is that it?
Yeah, and that's what radical climate action means. The first thing we could do is cut production. The second thing we could do is reproduce. There's a company called Fairphone, and they make a fully modular cell phone. I love this idea, and I would love to bring companies like Apple and Android to the table and have them adopt these kinds of ideas. So modularity is basically, I don't know if you all remember flip phones. I'm a digital native, whatever. I got my first phone when I was 5 years old, and it was a flip phone. And I remember you used to be able to take the back of the phone off and switch out the battery. And my mom would keep an extra battery in her purse in case the phone died. You didn't have to bring a charger around, you just kept an extra battery. Today, you cannot access the battery, and so most of us get a new phone every time the battery dies. So a fully modular phone, you should be able to replace the camera if you want a new camera, not the whole phone. You should be able to replace the screen if it breaks. Screens shouldn't be made of breakable materials. You should be able to replace the battery if its lifespan isn't lasting. There's ways for us to remanufacture the things that we have: clothing, technology, furniture, buildings, steel, in a way where we can keep the economy going, we can satisfy our desire for creativity, we can still have progress and innovation while making use of the materials that we've already extracted from the earth.
Okay, you're going against the interest of the biggest companies in the world, right? How do we enforce that? How do we convince them? How do we, I don't know, because do you think they care, or maybe the government will care? Sorry, I'm being the devil's advocate here. How do you do that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So people are always asking about the balance between our corporations responsible, our governments responsible, our individuals responsible, and I don't think that anybody can be held fully accountable or fully let off the hook. I think it can be a culture shift, and it also has to come with policy, and it also has to come with corporate shift. But the thing is that governments and corporations are made of people. I want to see more empathetic leaders in business. I want to see more empathetic CEOs who are committed to not having disgustingly large concentrations of wealth at the top of their companies where they're making an insane amount more money than the people at the bottom. More CEOs who are driven by sustainability, driven by circularity. And then also, as individuals, we have so much power, and not just in the way where, yeah, you can run for office, you can move into the corporate sector, but also like in the Oh my God, I think it was the 30s, don't quote me on this. In the 1930s in the United States, 1 out of every 3 workers was part of a union. And what that got them in bargaining power was the equivalent of what would today be $30 an hour with benefits. Unionization has been on decline for so long, and now we're seeing this steep rise. But we've lost our bargaining power because we lost our collective power.
But do you think it's possible maybe the new generations will force the companies and the governments to really take action?
You're asking really good questions. I don't think it's going to be that millennials and Gen Z do it. I said this yesterday. I do not have institutional power. My generation will not have institutional power before it's too late on climate. Older people telling me, oh, you give me hope. Your generation is going to save us. No, I'm not. You are. It's up to you. I'm going to put the responsibility back on the older generations. It's your responsibility.
That's great. I think that's so refreshing. Yeah, because you're right. You think, oh, they're going to do the work for us.
We have 6 years to 1.5 Celsius. We're on track for 3 degrees by 2100. By the time I'm 50 and in a place where I could have institutional power in a traditional sense in our current hierarchy, it's too.
That's great. I think that's so refreshing. Yeah, because you're right. You think, oh, they're going to do the work for us. You're not, right?
We have 6 years to 1.5 Celsius. We're on track for 3 degrees by 2100. By the time I'm 50 and in a place where I could have institutional power in a traditional sense in our current hierarchy, it's too late.
Okay. So what's your goal?
I would like to get everybody on board with a vision for what a sustainable just future could look like. I was like, the problem is so big, and I actually don't know where to go. I was learning, we were running out of farmable soil, and the food system was going to collapse in my 50s. I actually don't know where I should put my energy. Maybe the first problem is that no one I know has ever even heard of these things. And you guys might be a little more sustainability minded because you're on a Planet Tech stage, but I know you all are like, yeah, it's scary. Like most people I know have no idea. So I realized it needs to go beyond climate, right? Because if we're trying to focus on climate, we stop at solar panels and wind turbines, and we need a different system. We need a different food system. We need to talk about urban planning and resilience. If we're gonna have 10 billion people by 2050, where do we put them? If we're gonna have 1 billion climate refugees by 2050, where do we put them? And how do we make sure that they can still keep their cultures intact and educate their children and keep their careers intact? These are real system level planning questions that we all need to be asking because it's immediately relevant to every single one of us. We all need to get on the same page with what the problem is and what realistic next steps look like for getting towards the solution. The environment. Most people think of the environment as this abstract thing that exists over there, and how cute, oh my gosh, save the sea turtles. But actually the economy is built on the environment. You are built on the environment. None of us can continue to eat without farmable soil.
One of the things, just to finalize, how to survive climate change, is that it? Do you do that?
How to survive climate change?
Yes.
The cards have already been dealt. In a lot of ways, we are all collectively grieving what we've already lost and what we are already stand to lose. There's guarantees at this point about what we're losing and how many people we're losing. But at this point, it's a race to save all we can. We're just trying to make sure that every mouth is fed in an ever-destabilizing climate system. In terms of how to survive climate change, we're only going to do it by taking care of our neighbors, by building resilient food systems, by having backup plans. We're not going to do it by being competitive and greedy and saying, as long as I'm taken care of, it's fine. We're only going to do it together.
Okay. Thank you so much.